The Michigan Wolverines have had a ton of big-time running backs over the last few years, with guys like Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, Khalil Mullings, and Hassan Haskins. Going into the 2025 season, they had just lost their top two starters, but Michigan has not missed a beat with their newfound running back, Justice Haynes. The Wolverines utilized the transfer portal to pretty much near perfection, as Justice Haynes is the first running back in Michigan history to go for over 100 yards in the first 5 games. He was at one point a 5-star recruit who was starting to flame out at Alabama. Not only has he saved his career, but he is now in the Heisman conversation and could be one of the top running backs for next year's draft. In today's video, I want to introduce you to Justice Haynes, or to go through how he became a blue chip recruit, why things didn't work out at Alabama, and just how good he has been with Michigan so far. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about the insane rise of Justice Haynes. So in order to understand how Justice got to this point, we first need to go back in time, at least starting with his dad. His dad was Verron Haynes, and he was a Super Bowl champion. After originally playing football at Western Kentucky and walking on at Georgia, Haynes became a captain, a 5th-round pick, and an eventual Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers. In 2006, he won a Super Bowl, and his son was just 1 year old. His son was named Justice Haynes. As a little kid, he obviously loved the sport of football, and it was like entering a time capsule when you went into his room. He apparently wrote all of his goals on sticky notes, and each sticky note that he put on the wall was a dream that he had at some point, and they have sort of built up throughout his life and all the different pit stops he has had on his career. His dad said, quote, "One of the things I always preached was that it's only a dream till you put it on paper, and then it becomes a goal. It's encouraging to see that when I went into his room, and I look around and there were so many of them." Growing up, he watched his father play on the biggest stage in the sport of football, so Justice always had high aspirations and a high bar to live up to. He said, quote, "That's something my dad instilled in me, to never be outworked, to have a certain confidence and swagger about yourself that nobody can take away from you." Having a Super Bowl winning father, Justice was always around the game of football, and his dad knew what he was doing. And of course, he started playing football, but his dad wanted him to play because he wanted to play and not because he was supposed to. He didn't pressure Justice to do anything, and initially, he was actually not super committed about the sport. That was until one specific game where he didn't play the way he wanted to. He lost and decided to flip a switch, and everything changed from that. His dad said, quote, "He might have had a bad game and didn't have the results that he wanted, but he understood if he wanted to be successful that he would have to put in the work. So he came down to the gym and was like, alright, cool, I'm committed." At that point, I knew he had gotten somewhere and gotten over a hurdle, and the light bulb came on him. The two would both hit the ground running and get to work, and on the field, his father strictly kept it to fundamentals for Justice, but also passed down all the preparation and mental tactics that he had used to be successful. When it came time to eventually pass Justice on to high school coaches, they would shape him into an even better football player and young man, and now the dad could sit and watch and sort of coach from the sidelines. They grew up in the state of Georgia, and he started his high school career at Blessed Trinity High School. During his freshman season, they won a state championship before change would strike pretty much immediately. Longtime Blessed Trinity head coach Tim McFarland had retired, and after the pandemic hit, the success of the program was not the same caliber. He played a major role in 2019 helping them win a state championship, as he had over 1,700 yards and 18 touchdowns while sharing the backfield with a North Carolina commit by the name of Elijah Green. Through his first 3 years at Blessed Trinity, he had rushed for 5,900 yards and 72 touchdowns, including a junior season in which he rushed for 2,400 yards and 29 touchdowns. Eventually, he was looking for somewhere that was more competitive in a more difficult environment, and the new staff just wasn't cutting it for him. He knew it was time to look into a new school, and he looked for a high school that allowed early enrollment to college, but also had a strong preparation for the next level. That made committing to Buford High School and playing under head coach Bryant Appling pretty much a no-brainer. He had a reputation for sending players to the next level, and that was an easy choice for Justice. Appling didn't give Justice the reins right away, but after observing how hungry and eager he was for a competitive environment, it was an easy decision to put him on the field. By that point, he had also blown up into a blue-chip top 100 recruit, and schools from all around the country wanted to get their hands on him. So, where would Haynes end up going? Well, when it came time to decide where to go to school, he initially picked the Alabama Crimson Tide. He saw the opportunity to work under head coach Nick Saban and enter the most challenging and competitive environment with someone that would not go easy on anybody. He shocked the world when he committed to the Tide over Georgia because that's where his dad went. He ended up choosing the Tide over not only Georgia, but also Florida, Ohio State, and Southern California. He averaged 11.1 yards per carry, 23 touchdowns, and was just incredible. He was also an incredible kick return specialist as he had over 239 yards and 3 touchdowns. During his 4-year high school career, Haynes had 7,574 yards and 95 total touchdowns. According to 24/7 Sports, Justice Haynes was a 5-star recruit, the number 3 running back, and the 29th best player in the class of 2023. So how did he do when he got to Bama? Well, let's take a look. So when he arrived in Tuscaloosa in 2023, there were high expectations for him. He was not the only running back in that class, as they also had a big-time recruit by the name of Richard Young. Both of them were blue chips and were Nick Saban's guys. Every year, Bama fans are always waiting to see which young freshman will have an immediate impact, and since 2008, there were many true freshmen that were really good. Mark Ingram, Julio Jones, Trent Richardson, TJ Yeldon, Amari Cooper, Jalen Hurts, Jerry Jeudy, Tua, you name it. Alabama has had plenty of phenomenal freshmen, and many thought, given Haynes' speed, explosiveness, and power, that he'd have the ability to see the field as a true freshman for the Tide. He had gotten a significant amount of hype during the spring window, and many thought he could be a 1-2 punch with starter Jace McClellan. Except, it didn't end up going as expected, as in 2023, Haynes was still pretty limited. He ended up playing in his first game against Middle Tennessee State, but wouldn't score his first touchdown until late November against Chattanooga. In that game, he actually ended up having 2 touchdowns, and for his freshman season, he ran the ball 25 times for 168 yards and 2 total scores. It wasn't the numbers that him or anybody else expected, but he said he was grateful for the opportunity to be at Bama, and he had dreamed of being on TV and playing in big games, and that's what he was doing. Haynes always had a positive mindset and was waiting for his time to come. In 2024, he was expected to have even more of a role, but he ended up sort of being the third runner on the team. He went for over 100 yards against Western Kentucky in their first game, and also had a touchdown against USF, but after the hot start, he sort of fizzled out. He only went over 50 yards one more time during the season, but he still was a threat to take it to the end zone, as he had touchdowns in 5 of his last 7 games. In total, Haynes ran for 448 yards and 7 total touchdowns. He also caught 17 passes out of the backfield, but it felt like it was time for him to do something else. He ended up being second on the team in rushing touchdowns, 3rd in yards, and 4th in catches, but he was not the feature back there. Jalen Milroe and Jam Miller were the 2 guys slotted in front of him, and as I said, he knew it was time to do something else. Saban had retired, and they were already going through a transition, so he realized he needed to take a new path, and that he needed to be challenged in a different way every day, and that was why he decided to enter the 2025 transfer portal. He said, quote, "I felt like my time at Alabama was up, and I mean the portal felt like God was pushing me in a different direction." What's interesting is that Michigan and Bama had already played twice during his career, as they matched up on the first and on the last. The Wolverines beat the Crimson Tide in the Rose Bowl to begin 2024, and ended it with a win over the Tide in the Reliquist Bowl. Haynes became arguably the top running back in this year's transfer portal, and with them losing both Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings to the 2025 NFL Draft, they would need somebody new to step up in his place. One Michigan blog site said, quote, "Michigan Wolverines running back Justice Haynes is set to get a massive rise in touches this season, and with those opportunities, he'll see a rise in statistical production. At Michigan, things will be different, as he'll be 1A and 1B with Jordan Marshall, and if Haynes makes the leap this fall, the NFL Draft in 2026 might be the right thing to do." Basically, they're projecting this guy to have a huge year, and after having 51 yards in the spring game, Michigan fans were amped up to see what he could do when the month of September hit. He did not end up disappointing, as in his first game against New Mexico under the lights, he ended up running for 159 yards and 3 touchdowns. This was the most rushing yards for a Michigan running back since 1970, and it looked like Haynes had made the right decision. He had in fact become 1A, and Marshall had become 1B. In week 2, they would go on the road to play against number 18 Oklahoma, and Haynes definitely did his best. He ran the ball 19 times for 125 yards and a touchdown, but ultimately they would lose by 11 points. This was a setback for Haynes in Michigan, but they'd bounced back these last 3 weeks, and Haynes has gone insane. He ended up having over 100 yards and a touchdown against Central Michigan, and then on the road against Nebraska, him and Jordan Marshall went off. Justice ended up having 149 yards and a touchdown in that one, and then this past weekend against Wisconsin, Haynes once again went crazy as he totaled 117 yards and 2 touchdowns. His first 5 games have been absolutely incredible, and he said, quote, "I definitely expect this out of myself each and every week. I put in a lot of work, and I feel like I'm hard on myself, so I'm going to go back and watch the film and see what I could have done better." He has now had 5 consecutive games with at least 100 rushing yards, and he's the first player in Wolverines history to do that. He currently leads the Big Ten in rushing yards and yards per carry. This is pretty crazy. People are now starting to talk about him to have a Heisman campaign, and Sharon Moore said, quote, "He should be up for the Heisman. Start doing it." When you compare Haynes to the rest of the running backs in college football, he ranks 4th in rushing yards with 654, is tied for 4th in touchdowns with 8, and no one has more 50-plus yard runs than Haynes. He's an extremely explosive and consistent running back, and he's faced a variety of defenses. He faced 2 top 6 run defenses in both Wisconsin and Oklahoma, and he's even played schools like Central Michigan, which aren't very good. Michigan has had plenty of running backs in recent memory to be under the national spotlight, as Blake Corum was also in Heisman contention before he unfortunately got injured all the way back in 2022. Haynes could be better than all these guys, though. He's producing and being consistent at the highest level of college football, and he's really helping out his freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood. Michigan is a super balanced team, and this upcoming weekend, we're going to find out a lot more about the Wolverines. Can Haynes help them win on the road against a good USC team at night? We'll have to wait and see. For now, though, he's starting to become a Heisman contender and live up to the 5-star status he had a couple of years ago. I think his story is pretty cool, but what do you guys think? If you're a Michigan fan, what do you think of Justice Haynes? If you're a Bama fan, why do you think it didn't work out while he was in Tuscaloosa? And what other players should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.